Hey guys, how are we doing? It's good. This is a way more fun room. And also I get to do the fun stuff, which is talk about space. You're looking like you're in the wrong room. No. 1961, as you guys know, President John F. Kennedy challenged the USA to take the lead in the space race and land a man on the moon. This started the pioneer spirit with space as a new frontier, and that race begun, culminated, as you know, 7 years later when they did it. This next session is about the ambitious Moonshots for a sustainable future. And just like the bold plan of putting a man on the moon, this session will use the power of innovation, technology, and global collaboration to try and find that climate breakthrough.
We are so excited to dive into this conversation and to lead us into it. Please join me in welcoming to stage Miss Anusha Ansari, CEO at XPRIZE. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's great to have you all with us, and it's a true honor to be here at the Business and Philanthropy Forum talking about moonshots and how we can bring moonshots to solve our climate issues. I'm CEO of XPRIZE Foundation, an organization I've been a part of for several decades, and excited to bring some of our work with our panelists to talk about moonshots for climate. But to get us started here, first I would like to invite His Excellency Serengil Whips, the 10th President of Republic of Palau. President Whips is a true visionary whose commitment to the Palauan people and the environment includes emphasis on fostering a prosperous Pacific through shared resources. President Whips, would you join us, please?
Thank you, Anusha, and a very good afternoon to everyone. You know, we need moonshots. I want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here as a small island developing state, or we like to say big ocean state. And Palau is a PCIDS, but we like to say we're boss, big ocean states. And so, you know, the reality is despite contributing minimally to the global climate crisis, we bear the disproportionate burden of the devastating consequences. Sea level rise into our farms, coastal erosion, droughts, coral bleaching, and even the disappearance of our prized jellyfish because of heat. The global stocktake has warned us that the path we're on will far exceed 1.5. We're headed to 3 degrees. And that threatens the existence of our homes and our islands. You know, we have islands that are less than 2 meters above water. And at this trajectory, they will be gone. So the reality is we need immediate and resolute action. And it must be fueled by strong political will and global collaboration. I think the biggest challenge sometimes is political will. Governments tend to move a little slower. I know private sector can mobilize a lot faster, and that's why it's good to be in a room full of private sector. I came from the private sector, and it was much easier being a CEO of a company than being a president of a country. I can say that for a fact. At least to get things done. So as leaders of a big ocean state, we have taken significant strides to combat climate change, implementing ambitious policies and initiatives to reduce our emissions, but also enhance our resilience. And those individual efforts are not enough. to avert the looming climate catastrophe that we're faced with. The ocean is our lifeline, and it plays a pivotal role in our fight against climate change. It produces over half the oxygen we breathe, it provides vital nourishment, and underpins our cultural identity. Our livelihoods are inextricably linked to the health of our oceans. As Pacific Islands, recognizing the ocean's indispensable role and doing our part, the Pacific Islands at this COP are gathering and are committing to what we call unlocking blue Pacific prosperity. The ambitious vision we have hinges on, first of all, 100% effective ocean management, and that's sometimes compromising the lucrative fishing industry that we have. But more importantly, safeguarding 30% of our marine ecosystems, not just for our islands, but for the planet. We also want to foster resilient food systems and implement sustainable financing mechanisms to support our thriving communities. So I really invite all partners to join forces with us in this commitment to shape a resilient, sustainable, and prosperous future for our people and our planet. One other area that is so critical is transitioning to renewable energy. This is not just an environmental imperative, it is an economic necessity. Investing in renewable energy solutions aligns with our climate goals while fostering economic growth and resilience. I mean, this last few days, we've had the opportunity to hear of the UAE launching a 2 gigawatt solar field to produce power at the cost of 1.38 cents per kilowatt. Those of us that live on Pacific Islands that are unfortunately addicted to oil, and that's our source of energy, pay much higher costs. In fact, in some cases, when oil reaches peak, as much as 50 cents a kilowatt. So it's about partnership. It's about finding the right investment opportunities and building those opportunities together. At this COP28, we must galvanize that transition and set bold and ambitious targets, tripling global renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency by 2030. This will send a resounding message to markets and investors, signaling our collective commitment to a sustainable future. This target must also be complemented by a commitment to the phase out of fossil fuels. COP28 must deliver on both, and ensuring that we move decisively toward a low carbon economy. We also need progressive and actionable support package that includes finance, technology transfer, and capacity building to ensure that the benefits of renewable energy reach those who need it most. Equity must be at the heart of our mitigation commitments. I reiterate again and urge for a just transition that ensures that those that contribute the least to this climate crisis have equitable access to resources they need to shift to renewable energy. The time for complacency is over. The climate crisis demands a collective sense of urgency and an unwavering commitment to action. Let us embrace revolutionary climate innovations fueled by global collaboration and visionary moonshots to build the groundwork for a sustainable tomorrow, not just for our small islands, but for the entire planet. Together, we can rise to the challenge and create a future where our planet and its inhabitants and the generations to come can thrive. Thank you. Koman Bisulang.
Thank you, President Whip, for those sobering remarks. It is true that big ocean nations are paying disproportional price for the climate crisis that we face. At X Prize, we are committed to Moonshots. We're committed to advancing innovations to really truly build a abundant and equitable future for humanity. And we do that through incentive prizes. We have a video that I would like to share with you that tells you more about our work at X Prize.
Category 4 hurricane. The bonfire exploded overnight.
We are running out of time.
It's no wonder that we're pessimistic. It's no wonder that people think that the world is getting worse, but perhaps that's not the case. We live in a world full of limitless possibilities and formidable challenges, which become the canvas for our creativity. It's up to us, the disruptors, the innovators of today, to shape our future through scientific discovery, cutting-edge innovation, and critical thinking.
You are made of the same ingredients as those stars. We're not just poetically, we are literally stardust.
X Prize stands at the forefront of global incentivized competitions. We are the catalyst for extraordinary technological breakthroughs that inspire both optimism and hope. Over the past 28 years, these emerging technologies born out of intense competitions have redrawn the frontiers of what is possible, bringing unprecedented solutions that have significantly improved the lives of millions of people. Now X Prize has entered a new era, an era that will see us unite around 7 critical domains: climate and energy, biodiversity and conservation, deep tech and quantum, space and exploration, food, waste and water, health, and learning and society. For each of these grand challenge areas, we're creating a strategic roadmap, a vision of what's possible in the year 2040, a vision that will amplify our impact and scale our efforts towards a future of abundance and equity for all. In this new chapter, we've invited world-renowned innovators, thought leaders, philanthropists, experts of industry, and entrepreneurs to join us. Our Brain Trust members will envision and access radical moonshot ideas that could become future X Prize competitions. But we're not stopping there. We're extending an invitation to join our global movement by introducing a public prize voting mechanism that allows anyone around the world to get involved, to have a voice, to transform and solve these grand challenges.
Young people, don't be afraid. Be focused. Be determined. Be hopeful. Be empowered.
This marks the next chapter of our mission. This is our chance to leave a legacy for the future, a future we'll all be proud of for ourselves, for our children, and for our grandchildren, a future we can all build together.
So as you heard, it's an invitation for all of you to join our movement. We've been around for 29 years, and throughout these 29 years, we've launched over $300 million worth of prizes, which is about to double just in the next 12 months, all to advance innovations to solve humanity's grand challenges. We have activated 10,000 teams across 140 countries and continue to grow that. Climate and energy is a big focus area for us. We've had many competitions in helping clean and save the oceans and the biodiversity of the oceans, recycling carbon and capturing carbon, alternative protein, and we continue to do so with our prizes that are in the works. Right now, we have 4 of those prizes active still and looking for innovators to continue enter our competitions. One is scaling carbon capture to gigaton levels from oceans or the atmosphere. Look to expand our work in the climate area, and the success of our competitions hinges on the very fact that we ask teams to build real solutions for real market. We look for innovators to reach a very ambitious goal we set for them. We're always after those moonshots. So we set a very high bar, but a bar that is very clear and targeted. And people can say that, yes, we've achieved this. So it's not something that we say we think they achieved it, but it's very clear when they achieve that target. But in order to get these solutions out to the market, we require collaboration of the public and private sector, the innovators, and people out there promoting these competitions. So we truly believe in global collaboration, and our organization is built on that. People who will join me on the panel today will talk about the role they play on bringing this type of moonshot thinking, moonshot approaches to climate. And I'm very excited and honored to be facilitating a conversation with them. So with that, I'd like to actually invite our panelists to join me on stage. Dr. Mo Ibrahim, founder and chair of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, which he established in 2006 to support good governance and exceptional leadership in African continent. Dr. Ibrahim is founding chair of Satya Capital Limited, a private investment firm primarily focused on Africa, and co-founder and co-chair of Africa-Europe Foundation, launched to reset and bolster Africa-Europe relations. Also joining Dr. Ibrahim is Mr. Lawrence Lin, Chairman and Acting CEO of Asia Philanthropy Circle, a membership-based platform for Asian philanthropies to exchange, learn, and collaborate, as well as co-founder and acting CEO of Asia Community Foundation, designed to encourage purposeful philanthropy and cross-border giving in Asia. Joining us is also Ms. Tokumbo Ishmael, a global voice for creating wealth and impact by unlocking the potential of businesses that provide essential goods and services that address the accessibility, affordability, and inclusion needs of underserved markets to drive superior performance and shared prosperity. She is co-founder and managing director of Alethea Capital, a female-led impact investment private equity firm, a Yale World Fellow, and a member of the inaugural cohort of Aspen Institute's Finance Leadership Fellowship. Please, I would like to have the panelists join me on stage. Great. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today. So I want to start us off by recognizing, let me see, maybe this way. Okay. I want to first recognize that you are all leaders in your field and have achieved great work that we like to learn about. So let me start maybe with the first question with you, Dr. Ibrahim. Your foundation is reshaping global strategies toward climate action to address Africa's pressing adaptation needs. Can you speak to this?
different place actually. Our main problem in Africa is adaptation, not mitigation. It is adaptation and development. And our friends in the north need to understand that. Let me put our case clearly here. When it comes to mitigation, Africa actually is already at net zero. I don't know if people appreciate that or not. To start with, we have 22 African countries whose main source of energy is renewable. No other continent has that ratio of countries. Secondly, our emission is around 3% annual emission of the global emission, 3%. But we have the largest sink, carbon sink in the world. It's not the Amazon. The largest sink in the world really is the Congo Basin. The Congo Basin sank last year more than the total UK emission in 2021. So we are really net zero. Our problem is that we have 600 million people in Africa without power. This is the main issue for us in Africa, the issue of development. And people need to understand, we need to develop, we need to get power for the 600. This power should be mainly renewable, but they're gonna need also gas to supplement that. That is really crucial for us in Africa. How to develop green, and how to deal with the 600 people out of everything. Do you understand that? Can you survive one day without power, without electricity? You cannot. This is the issue for us. Now, climate also causing huge damage to our society. Most of the affected, 7 out of the 10 most affected countries by climate are all in Africa. What is happening? Droughts, flooding, heat, etc., causing internal migration. Huge communities have to move out in Africa. What happens then? There is a conflict over land resource. You have huge communities which are herders. They have their animals. And then suddenly there is no grass. What do you do? They move south. But in the south, you have farmers. And those guys have their little, farms there. And suddenly those guys come with their animals. And what you end up with, conflict and war. If you look at most of the conflicts in Africa, it's conflicts about land use. 400,000 people died in Darfur initially, and it's importantly because of the conflicts over land use between herders and farmers. And that is caused by climate change. Thank you very much. We did not beat this crap up there. Other people put it. But we will have to deal with it. People need to understand our priority is adaptation, because this weak, poor countries don't have the resilience in order to deal with the catastrophe happening around us in Africa. And our friends in the north are in denial. They keep pumping out their gas, make promises, make pledges, which they never do. Why, on average, every American man, woman, child puts out 17 tons per year? Why do our friends in Europe and China put out 7 tons per year of carbon? Why? What are you going to do about it? Instead of coming lecturing us in Africa, they need to deal with it. Are you serious to deal with that? That is the problem. In Africa, you take a country like Uganda, they put out 0.2, less than 1/5 of ton per year. And we have our friends there coming lecture us. Excuse me, guys, get real. So we have really different issues in Africa, and people have to understand that. And people in the north need to act. And the only way to act is to use the market force, which they are unwilling to use. The only way to deal with this catastrophe we have is carbon tax. Tax is a three-letter word, which is worse than any four-letter word for any North politicians. They cannot touch this thing. They invented the market. They convinced us about the market, and then they don't want to use the market. Why? Because unfortunately, there is a major flaw, major problem with all this liberal democracy, these election cycles. And politicians want to get elected. And what to get elected, they cannot make a stand. Famous statement by Juncker, previous head of the European Union. He admitted, he said, we politicians know what we need to do, but we don't know how to get elected once we do it. That's why they don't do it. And this is a major problem, and we're heading to a catastrophe because those guys are in denial, and they don't have the guts or the spine to stand up and tell their people, we all have to accept, we need to accept that we have to accept sacrifices. This will not come cheap. But anything touches our pocket, no, we cannot deal with it. And that is the real issue. Then everybody come to COP28 or COP27 and we talk, but pledge, we pledge. No, you don't pledge. What we need is the guys who are putting out all this carbon need to pay for it. And this money should go for the guys who are suffering. That's the only way. It's not a charity. It's a carbon price. You want to use it, pay for it. And that's the only way to change behavior of countries and individuals. But we don't have the will to do it, unfortunately. So I think we are heading really the wrong way. I'm sorry to maybe...
So Dr. Ibrahim,
Yeah.
you work with the young people. I know you're focused in Africa, but do you think the younger generation looks at this differently? Are they willing to pay? Not in Africa, but outside of Africa. I see a change in the next generation that they're not just thinking about the financial benefit to themselves, but they are looking at the future.
Absolutely. Younger people are much better than us in understanding these issues. Unfortunately, they don't vote. If you look at the percentage of young people, the old guys go and vote. And this is a big problem. You know, you look at any voting pattern in Europe or in UK, it is the old guys who voted for Brexit, not the young guys. It is not their future. But they messed up with the young guys, they go to the street and scream. But go to vote, they don't vote. And that is the problem. Don't demonstrate, go and vote. That is the issue.
Okay, to solve our climate, we need to actually
We
do
need
a
to
campaign
get
to
real,
get young people
get
to
real.
vote.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Mr. Lin, let me go to you next. Singapore has been a leader in innovation, and they've been very focused on sustainability. We actually had our rainforest semifinal testing there. We were very excited how supportive the government was bringing our teams there, and also we had a conference with the alternative protein and driving a lot of regulations there. So can you tell us a little bit more about Asia Philanthropy Circle and how your members are supporting innovation and Moonshots in this area?
Thanks. Let me give the context for Southeast Asia, and I'm going to talk, although we are supposed to cover Asia, most of our members are from Southeast Asia. So I'll talk a little bit about Southeast Asia. We are really quite small in land size. I think it's about 3% of the Earth's total land area, 2.5% of the Earth's ocean. But we have nearly 700 million people. And our emissions per person is about close to 5 tons a year. So 5 tons plus times the 700 million is still quite a lot. So we have some significant mitigation work to do. But where we live It's got incredible biodiversity. It's a hotspot for 1 in 5 species globally, 50% of the tropical peatlands, 40% of global mangroves. And we've heard all the doom and gloom about climate change. I think Southeast Asia is particularly vulnerable. 60% of our population live at or near the coast. If you are looking at sea level rise, some projections project more than a meter in the next 100 years of sea level rise, depending whether you believe those models, if it's business as usual, right? And it's these slow onset events, that will cause a lot of devastation, climate refugees, apart from food security, livelihoods, physical security issues that we all know is going to happen. And yet, the action on the philanthropy side, I'll talk on the philanthropy side, has been quite slow until now. We talked about 2%. I mean, just to give a size of the problem, I mean, people estimate about in 2030 onwards, we need about $10 trillion of climate financing. Philanthropy is plugging maybe about 10 billion of that. This is globally. Philanthropy is only 2% of all philanthropic funding in the world. So essentially, your $1 philanthropic dollars needs to leverage about $1,000. That's the sort of scale. And I dread to see what the numbers are for Southeast Asia, because in Southeast Asia, up till recently, there was very little local funding, local funders in this space. So this is where we come in. Well, I think the first moonshot is to get the philanthropists to get going, right? Because they were not, and that's what we've been doing at Asia Philanthropy Circle. I mean, we've got 60 members, essentially families who have been deep in philanthropy, working throughout the region on different projects, including climate, but quite often not. Some have been deep in climate philanthropy, but most weren't. And I would say there's a huge lack of agency by people to think that they can do something about this, precisely because the scale of the problem is so big. So how do we break the problems up? How do we introduce meaningful entry points for our members? And how do we scale up things that seem to work? So that has been the first part of our journey. I mean, we brought together 9 members. In fact, I've got 2 in the audience right now in the Climate Collective to learn. That's critical, but also to collaborate, which is quite intentional. And I guess the future is about how do we scale up some of these innovations, right? You're not going to get to when we talk about moonshots, you don't just jump to the moon, right? You just don't suddenly get there, and it takes many years of layering. Starting small, looking for the leverage points, looking for the scale, and building, and it requires a lot of collaboration. You have to build trust, and that's what we've been doing. Because a lot of it has been pilots, but the next phase, we are a lot more ambitious and tackling what we can call moonshots. I mean, just to give a sense of, it's just some of the projects that some of our members have been getting up to. Some of our members, including myself, we have sponsored a climate smart rice project in Vietnam. Some of you may not know that in Vietnam, agriculture accounts for 33% of global greenhouse gas emissions, 1/3. And rice production accounts for 50% of that because of the way that it's cultivated, through just flooding, the rice paddy fields. And the climate rice project is to reduce that very significantly. It's a small project. A lot of it is around behavioral change among farmers, because they have to be convinced. Another project is biogas to energy solution. that some of our members, one member started by using philanthropic dollars to fund what essentially is food, wastewater treatment and waste treatment from food processing sites. And about 1,000 of these food processing sites throughout Indonesia. But you start with 1 and 2 and 3, and capturing the methane, burning it, so that you generate electricity, but also reduce the carbon, the GHG emissions. Started small, but can scale, tremendously. So all this is predicated on starting with trust-based communities, starting small. The next phase, I think we're looking at much more ambitious projects. We're looking at capacity building of government officials, because everywhere we go, we find that your middle level sort of officials in national government, or your those in subnational level, they don't know how to implement and execute the national policies, the national targets. So how do we build up capacity? Those are the sort of ideas. I'm not sure we'll end up doing that, but those are the sort of ideas that we are looking at for next phase. Climate financing as well.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to plug in because XPRIZE actually leverages each philanthropic dollars 33 times. So don't forget to use us as a point of leverage in your decisions. But as you said, there's no silver bullet. We have to start on multiple fronts, small project, and scale them up. Ms. Ishmael, let me go to you next. As someone who works with a lot of our teams, they're small startup businesses, and I've seen how sometimes they struggle with the scaling. So as an impact investor, having worked across banking and business and technology sectors, what are the most common barriers you see some of these small businesses facing in the climate space, and where do you see the opportunities there for breakthroughs?
Thank you. So an obvious place to start is to say that there isn't enough intentionality around financing that's actually targeting innovation, and whether it's climate innovation or any other innovation, really the lack of intentionality and the size of the pool to actually finance innovations is an obvious place to start. But I want to move away from that sort of narrative that we generally talk about. And when I think about climate innovation in Africa, there are a couple of areas. First of all, we don't have strong local innovation ecosystems that can actually even birth some of the innovation that is relevant to our local markets. And when we talk about, climate adaptation innovation, someone who's sitting in, San Francisco may not necessarily understand the adaptation needs for cooking fuels in local communities, or the needs of a farmer in northern Nigeria who's just even trying to get the yield on their tomatoes, given the weather conditions and the ability to even store those tomatoes during season. So we don't have the local innovation ecosystems. And from where I sit, what is part of the travesty is we talk about this youth dividend that Africa has and a large youth population, but we're not educating our youth to be able to have the right science and technological wherewithal to be able to even innovate, such that even when we're intentional about financing, they can scale. So part of it is also the ability to have the technological know-how that enables them to pilot innovation in a relevant manner in our local context. So yes, finance is usually something we talk about, but the actual ability to do that. Another area is just in general infrastructure. Eco-innovators or general innovators in Africa, when they want to try and pilot and scale their innovations, they first of all have to become mini local governments and have their own power and have their own logistics and all manner of things that people take for granted in the West. And so the ability to innovate is also hindered by all this baggage that you're bringing to the table. So what we need to see is, first of all, how do we develop part of that infrastructure? And that's also where climate innovation and climate finance and, action against, so climate change action can be seen as an opportunity for us as Africans and not just about woe is us, because we need to have that innovation happen, but we need to create the space. And even in creating the infrastructural space, that's also an opportunity for us to think about how we move from dirty fuels to clean fuels and what needs to be done in those areas. Because much of the discussion, as has been said earlier, is around mitigation. And much of the discussion is around how we take some of these renewable sources and add them to a grid. In Africa, certainly in Lagos, in Nigeria, where I live, the grid is minuscule. That not, less than 20% of the homes where I live have actual access to the grid, which is already a dirty grid. So talk less of trying to bring on clean fuels. And then the rest of the 80% are pumping out diesel. And there isn't enough going into thinking about the innovation. So again, coming back to the local innovation ecosystem. So then I'll come back to the capital that we're talking about. Every time that announcements come out of COP, there are all these announcements about billions of dollars that needs to go and into Africa in particular, and we come with our begging bowls. But we are also not coming intentionally to the table with a powerful voice so that we can be intentional on our own terms locally to finance innovation that is relevant to us. So when an entrepreneur is already facing all these upheavals, it's very difficult to think about scaling because you're barely able to get out of the door. And furthermore, it would be remiss of me not to mention gender as an aspect, because first of all, I run a large gender lens fund on the continent that's intentional about financing female-led and impacted businesses. And what we find is, despite the preponderance of female-led businesses, very little finance goes to such businesses. But then when you think about who is most affected by some of these climate change we're talking about, overwhelmingly in our markets, over 80% of the people affected are overwhelmingly usually women. And so if you think about when you have a problem, you're usually the one who wants to innovate around that. And so even if a woman is innovating or a female-led business or female-impacted business is innovating, even when there's intentionality around finance, it's minuscule that gets to that population. So we need to think about having that gender intentionality as well at the center, because of the fact that women are the ones that are mostly affected through the drought and all the extreme weather conditions that we see. And they're usually the ones who are making the decisions around the purchasing of clean fuel or not. When we talk about the three main areas that are usually affected, we talk about cooking, power, and transportation. Who does most of the cooking? Yet we haven't spent enough time about being intentional about shifting some of those populations away from dirty fuel firewood, which doesn't just benefit the woman and her health, but also helps with deforestation, also begins to provide some of the carbon credits that we're talking about. Because yes, we want the West to use carbon credits, but if we're not intentional about the innovations that can bring around those carbon credits, even when that intentionality comes into place, do we have enough to offer? So yes, there's the nature-based solutions and the Congo, but when we're talking about adaptation and driving people to change the way that they live, adapting the way that they cook, move around, fuel up their homes and industry, we have to be intentional about the innovation that happens there. And lastly, I'll say, in terms of being here at COP, we need to see more gender on the agenda because there's not enough of it. Like I said earlier on, over 80% of those that are impacted by the climate change that we're seeing are women, yet less than 30% of those that are talking about climate mitigation or adaptation, innovation and climate finance, less than 30% are women. Last year, I think there were over 100 male leaders that came to discuss the issues we're all talking about today, and less than 10 of the leaders less than 10 women were amongst those leaders. So we need gender on the agenda to drive real change.
Thank you. Because I want to make sure that the audience has a chance to ask some question, maybe I just throw a question to all of you with some brief remarks. You're here at COP. We're here in Business and Philanthropy Forum. What type of innovation or collaborations and partnerships you would like to see out there in this audience or the general audience who's here and or watching online? Any thoughts or ideas that you want to throw out there?
Yes. Again, my area is around financing and scaling innovation. I'd like to see more collaboration between the money bags, whether those are the money bags in business and the philanthropists, and those that are actually innovating. I think prizes like the X Prize are great. How are we spotlighting those eco-innovators? I'm a trustee on the Earthshot Prize, which also grants prizes to eco-innovators across fixing climate, restoring nature, and water-based solutions, as cleaning our water and oceans as well. And are we spotlighting these innovators enough? Are we hearing more about them such that even the money bags, when they turn up, Mr. Ibrahim, do they know who in the audience is an eco-innovator? One of our eco-innovators is in the back there from Coral Vita. If you want to speak to him later, please do. But we need to spotlight more of them, and that's the kind of collaboration I want to see more of.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, Moonshots is not just about technology or finance. I mean, you need the holistic sort of ecosystem to come together. You need the innovation in business models. You need ability to work with governments. You need movement building to move consumer demand and the way that consumers behave. So I guess, I mean, this is a broad tent, where I've come. I'm mostly a student, but we need to connect, if we want to move the needle, and this is where and why we are here.
Great. Mr. Ibrahim, any?
Yeah, very quickly, just to allow people to speak. I think we need to scale things up. There's so hundreds of attempts here and there, etc. What doesn't work, and it has to scale to have any effect, because the problem is major ahead of us, and we are tinkering around the edges. So you need to be a little bit more serious.
So with that, let me open it up to questions from the audience. We have mics here, so please raise your hand and we'll bring you the mic. There's one in the back of the room.
Thanks, everyone. My name's Sam Teicher. I'm the coral guy that Toke shouted out. So we're growing corals to restore dying reefs. It's a business that shouldn't need to exist. And moving past what we're doing, I think it's pretty clear there's a lot of great social and environmental entrepreneurs who have incredible and needed solutions that can scale. And it's great to see so much capital getting deployed more and more while there's a need for a lot more. But so much is coming in the $50 million or the $500 million commitments. And there's a lot of solutions, particularly in the global south and in communities that need the $5,000 and the $50,000 checks so that they can start receiving the $5 million and the $50 million check. So this is as much a question of the whole room, but I'm wondering, appreciating investors have a tough time de-risking and spreading things across. If you guys have thoughts about how the philanthropic and investing communities can start deploying more early stage capital so that more Earthshots and Moonshots can be achieved.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
We just hosted the Earthshot Prize, right? You know, bit like the X Prize, but so few of the nominees, you know, are from Southeast Asia. I think it's from Asia for the matter. I think about 2% of all the nominations, right? And it's because we are not the entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs are not supported, you know. And I think we've identified that as an issue that we need to bring in funds, you know. And it's not just about the money. I think we need to help incubate them, build up capacity. They need mentors. They need development, because otherwise they are not going to move on to the big things. So I completely agree that the philanthropic dollars need to be at a much earlier stage.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said earlier, right, about capacity of local ecosystems for that innovation. We need to see a variety of structures, blended finance, such that at the earlier stages, there are different capital providers that are willing to take the first loss. Usually that's the philanthropic capital. And that's where there needs to be more collaboration along the capital stack, so that when that first loss comes in, that you can then move up through the stack and be appealing. But again, for me, even when we're intentional about those dollars, certainly in Africa, we need to build a local ecosystem for that kind of innovation. With the Earthshot Prize, we struggle to find nominators on the African continent. And again, if they are not, it's a chain. If the education isn't happening, then where's the pipeline? And other economies where startup ecosystems were pioneered, like the UK, Germany, and the US, there was more intentionality around that local innovation ecosystem and support for that. So I'd say that plus blended
let us be
finance.
frank here, if you allow me. Let's be frank here. This is a problem we're unable to solve. The problem of investing, the problem of investing in startup, small startup, the people need $10,000, $20,000. We have been struggling with that problem for the last 30 years, and we did not find a solution. The problem is that this kind of investment need angel investors. We don't have angel investors. Any fund, and I'd worked with a lot of those guys, you need to do due diligence. You know how much is the cost of due diligence? It's over $100,000. How could you spend $100,000 doing due diligence to invest $10,000? It's crazy. It cannot happen. So forget it. We need to find a way. I don't know the answer, frankly. We don't have an answer for it. Because the only way to get the guys who helped Bill Gates to start his garage thing or this, these are all angel investors. People are willing to say an uncle, a neighbor, or somebody will say, okay, here is $5,000, $10,000, have a go. We don't have that in Africa, unfortunately. Part of it also because we don't have a large upper middle class which can afford to do that. That's part of the problem, actually. But without angel investors, we cannot handle that. Funds cannot handle that. Whether blended finance or non-blended finance, it cannot do it. Full stop. We tried all that, it doesn't work.
So as a member of the Africa Business Angels Network, we actually have a few angel networks across the continent.
Very good.
Lagos Angel Network and a number of others. And actually, Rising Tide Africa as well. And actually, what we find even within the angel network is that scarcity of entrepreneurs with innovation. And it comes back to developing the capacity of the local ecosystem.
Yeah. There's one more question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Chris Bogatu from the Sprint, which is the Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation in Germany. And maybe also to comment, more a comment than a question. So we have a multi-billion euro budget to support really moonshots, ambitious moonshots, if you can even amplify the moonshot even more. So I'm happy, like we have very few innovators from the Global South, and we would love to invite people from the Global South to apply with Sprint. And I mean, it's important, I think, for the whole planet to, it's not just in Germany, so we invest across the world. And I just can invite, maybe afterwards we can exchange cards and
I'd be glad
see how we
to.
can work together.
I'd be glad to, and we'd need to put some of that money again into educating and building the capacity so that we're not just relying on science and technology from the global north.
We have a question here and two in the back.
Thank you very much for your beautiful panel. I think that is very important to have a gender lens every time and to be respectful of the world and not to be mansplaining, because this is where we actually start changing stuff. I'm Agustin Bato from Eidos Global. I'm from Argentina. We started an NGO in Buenos Aires and now we reach more than 85 countries. We're invited over here to speak about education, especially about green skills. And one of the major challenges that we found is that educational systems worldwide are not teaching sustainability and not even sustainability thinking. So it's very hard, as you say, to actually approach an entrepreneurship idea if we don't understand the challenge. So before I'm into the moonshot, I think that we have a base where we need to work, that is in the curricular development and the decision making of the politicians that are governing education worldwide. So my question for you is, how do we streamline sustainability innovator from schools to actually entrepreneurs? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the panel wants to take it first?
This is not a question, actually.
So I think.
I mean, we must streamline.
We all agree.
You know, we agree with you. I have to come back to my relevance in my local context. We just even have to get basic education right and add that to the curriculum. So we can leapfrog the manner in which education has happened for the past however many decades and have it integrated. But again, there needs to be intentionality around African governments and those that are supporting and advising that we do think about this capacity building seriously.
Just to add to that, I think education is also one of our pillars. So I know there are innovators out there that have approached education with a lens of sustainability built into the curriculum. You don't teach sustainability, you make it part of the teaching. And I think it comes down to implementation and scaling and deploying those across many different cultures and languages. And those are some of the challenges that at XPRIZE we're looking at addressing. There's also one question in the back. I think we have time for one last question.
Thank you. I'm Asif Saleh. I'm the Executive Director of BRAC. I just kind of want to pick your take on what Mo said, which was very interesting. Because, you know, from the majority world perspective, the problems are very different, right? It is an adaptation issue. And I'll just give you two very quick examples. Coastal towns in Bangladesh do not have water. It takes about $300 to have a rainwater harvesting system. We don't have money to scale that. So it's not an innovation problem, it's a scaling problem. And there's 50% of women, because they are having salty water, they're developing pre-cervical cancer symptoms, right? So again, it's low-tech innovations that needs to be scaled across the world. So why do we think that disruptive innovation or moonshot innovation is the problem? I think that's basically, my fundamental question, that there are already innovations out there which is working, but we don't have money or efforts to scale those.
Scale it up, yeah.
So I think with the problems are there, the solutions are there. But we are continuously on this journey of finding innovations because this is the most sexy things to do. I think we need to kind of reaffirm that whole, reframe this whole challenge a little bit. So it's, I don't know if you have any view on this, but thank you.
I can maybe address it from XPRIZE. When we look at innovation, innovation doesn't mean that it's just something novel and new, but a lot of our competitions are actually about scaling. So the carbon removal, there are lots of carbon removal solutions out there, but none of them scale to gigaton. And when you look at the reports, our only chance of survival is we can scale up to gigaton. But you need innovation sometimes to scale them up, because what was innovated initially is not designed to scale. So you need to change that, maybe tweak it a little bit, or maybe change some elements of it, or bring some multiple solutions to create a supply chain for the solution. So we try to focus on an end-to-end marketable solution when we launch competition. That's why our competitions are much harder, much larger in scale, and it takes, between 4 to 6, 7 years to win the competition. So scale is at the heart of everything we're trying to do, because right now we're not just about what's the latest thing, it's about what can be out there fastest that can really have an impact. So we're very impact focused. And I
mean, you're absolutely right. It is scaling. I mean, there was a big fuss yesterday, celebrations about the agreement of a new fund, $400 million for loss and damage. I think you heard that announcement. And it's laughable. $400 million, excuse me, guys. I mean, we're not really serious. And the people putting up this stuff need to pay for it. And it's so simple. And really, all our focus should be on that. You break it, you fix it. That's it. And otherwise, we're going nowhere. And the way we are at the moment, really, we're going nowhere. You understand that? We had the hottest year this year. Yes. And it's going to go further. And we reach a tipping point, there's no way back. And people think, oh, somebody we're going to write a piece of software and we're going to fix the planet. Excuse me. Dream on. We have to be serious, guys. Well, I'm sorry I have a speaker.
No, sorry. So,
no, but we should also ensure that the definition of innovation is not just about software.
Yes,
So it is local innovations, but and again, it comes back to what's the local relevant innovation and who's in the ecosystem that can take that and scale it.
Yeah, don't be lulled into this complacency that somebody somewhere will fix it. We're going to find a machine, we're going to find a piece of something which is going to absorb all this carbon and all live happily after. It won't happen, guys. We have no time. You have to stop emitting. That's it. And if somebody invents something, welcome. That will be icing in the cake. But that is not the solution.
Yeah. With that, I want to thank our panel. I think we all agree that we've had a very vibrant conversation, and there is no silver bullet. I think if there's one thing we can all agree on, there is no silver bullet. We need an ecosystem. We need collaboration. We need multiple solutions. We need to change behavior. We need collaboration of the governments, the private and public sector, all to come together to address our climate change. Thank you all for playing your part.
Very much. We're so grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to you, Anusha, for your expert moderation. Now, as we... Oh, apologies. There is one more here.
Yes. So to bring us to a close, we have one more very important conversation to have. And to set that up, I wanted to also use this opportunity to introduce a new prize that we're working on and we hope to be able to launch to address one of the impacts of climate change on our natural resources. So we listened to President Whip's reference early on to coral bleaching and the devastation that it has caused the island nations. The corals represent essentially 25% of our home to 25% of our marine life. About 1 billion people are supported by the coral reefs, and 9.9 trillion in annual ecosystem service value comes from the coral reefs. So despite this, we are at the risk of losing 90% of our coral reefs by 2040 due to climate change, ocean acidification, agricultural runoffs, and human activity. So in order to do this, we need to look at new ways to restore our coral reefs. Right now, the current technologies are highly manual, expensive, slow, and it takes about 720,000 divers working 24 hours a day and a cost of $1 trillion just to be able to maintain status quo and counteract the rate of loss we have today. So we have a coral moonshot that we want to launch at the X Prize to be able to bring innovations to be able to restore coral reefs, and the competition will enable solutions that can look at 3 hectares or larger area to restore coral reefs with a more resilient biodiversity of at least 3 species, and do that much faster and cheaper. So this is a competition that we are inviting innovators from around the globe to join us. And we have a session later on December 9th in the Tech and Innovation Hub that we want those of you who are interested to learn more about it, to join us there. This is a competition that is very important, of course, to island nations, and we are so honored to have several of these island nations partnering up with us, including Palau and Barbados as some of our initial partners, and also St. Kitts and Nevis. With that, I want to invite Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, to join us to share his closing remarks with us. President.
Good evening to everyone. First, let me thank you, moderator, for your introduction and to this wonderful event that is being held today, and to give me the opportunity to speak. I had the opportunity to listen attentively, and as a prime minister and a new leader of an island state, it really, in me, caused a number of things to be arisen, in the sense that in listening to the panelists and the questions that were asked, and also the comments that were made, has given me a sort of a new perspective on things. So if the intention of this forum was to some way influence those who are here to rethink to some extent the approach to dealing with the issue of climate and energy, at least with me, you have accomplished some of that. I want to say that for the island states, that the challenge is really difficult. And with all the bloom and gloom, or doom and gloom rather, that we hear with respect to climate change, somehow I think we are somewhat optimistic in the region. Maybe it's because of the sunshine and the beaches that we see every day that give us a natural sense of optimism. And the reason why I say that, we are constantly looking for solutions. We understand in the island states where the issue comes from. It does not come from us. We do not contribute to the climate change that we are seeing. Our emission is almost negligible rather, meaning that we contribute almost nothing. As a matter of fact, based on our forests and our wide oceans, we might actually be helping the situation than worsening the situation. However, we are bearing the brunt of the climate change. To give you a few examples so that you understand, I was called by a hotel owner of a major international brand, who said to me he can no longer advertise as a beach resort because his beach has totally disappeared. That means jobs are lost, downgrade of his resort, and loss of his investment to some extent. We are also seeing the issue of sargassum. I know coral was mentioned, but the issue of sargassum, where the seaweed, as we call it in local parlance, is affecting the aesthetic of the beaches, which means they're not as pristine as we would have had them before. Secondly, they're affecting the fishermen and the equipment. And thirdly, our biodiversity is affected. For example, the turtles that will come to lay eggs and would be a major international attraction, they too are suffering tremendously as a result of this sargassum seaweed. And so we understand all of that, what is happening is really affecting us. However, we are searching for solutions. And I think apart from being resilient and all of that, how do we adapt? But how do we continue to not only live, but how do we thrive under these very difficult and challenging circumstances? And that is why I like the idea of the moonshot, because I think about it from a different perspective. That it was bold when it was announced by President Kennedy. It was something that many thought was impossible, but he understood from where he was that he needed something like this to drive America forward. Now the world is being asked to come with a solution that would drive all of us forward. The problems we all are aware of, and I think that we have come now to accept that climate change is real. I'm a student of science, and I remember maybe in the early 2000s, there were even scientists who were trying to convince me, a student of science, that climate change was not real. So we have come a long way, which gives me hope. We have all come to the point where basically we are accepting it, and we are saying now, let us find the solutions. So for the island state of St. Kitts, let me give you an example, a local example. So we understand that even though we are a small region, that we can contribute to the solution as well, because we are suffering the effects irrespective of who caused the issue. We still have to find a solution, otherwise we will not survive. And so we are offering to the world, for example, as we have offered other things in the past, that we can really be a beacon for renewable energy. For example, St. Kitts and Nevis, we have geothermal. And that geothermal energy, we have invested, we have made the first investment of about $17 million US. Let's say we need another 20 million US dollars. But out of that, we can get about 1 gigawatt. The islands only need about 50 megawatts on a really, really good day, when everybody would have the air conditioner on, all their fans are on, and everything is going. So it means, therefore, you have the potential of another 950 megawatts. And what do you do with that energy? Can we offer it, for example, for green shipping through the Caribbean? And say to the cruise ship when you come, we have enough energy here, we can power you up on shore so you can shut off your engines that are run on fossil fuel. That will save our reefs, that will cut down on the cost for these large ships, that would provide jobs for us, and that would help to conserve the environment. We can also say we have so much energy. How about if we convert it into new technologies such as molecules or ammonia and so forth, and then we can ship that to areas so that they can now adapt to renewable energy instead of using the fossil fuel base. So even though we are small, can't we contribute to the solution? Because even though we have maybe 55,000 people, we see over 1 million tourists per year. When those tourists come, they have to come and they use resources, and most of the resources that they use are fossil fuel based. And if we were to convert that so that those millions who come to the Caribbean now can use renewable energy, that can help in a great sense to make sure that people can still enjoy the Caribbean, enjoy the vacation, and do it in a safe way for the environment, but also help to produce jobs and maintain our countries and therefore their sustainability as far as your ability to travel, your ability to enjoy planet Earth, and for us to continue to have an income and to develop a country that is more resilient and can adapt. And so I want to say that our moonshot is that. Who can help us to develop such renewables? And we have done significant work and invested, and we heard about the talk of scaling. We have the opportunity to scale. The technology is there, the know-how is there, the studies are done, and this is an opportunity really, so that St. Kitts Nevis, which can provide so much energy, which it does not really need, can actually help to power other countries. We can power St. Martin, we can power Anguilla, we can power Puerto Rico, because we'll have enough energy to power all those other islands around. And that is our moonshot idea. And therefore, I want to say that we have embarked on the great concept of a sustainable island state. Our moonshot idea is to create the first sustainable island state in the world so that it can be a model that others can look at. And we are determined to do that. And we have made significant investments. Just recently, we have signed a deal for $80+ million investment in a major solar plant, which will be the largest storage plant in the Caribbean. Even though we are the smallest independent nation, we will have the largest storage solar plant in the Caribbean. That's a moonshot idea. They ask, how can such a small island embark on such an ambitious vision? But we have invested and it has come to reality. So we would have maybe 30% to 50% of our energy from renewable energy. We have also embarked on the idea of scaling up, that's one, but also to educate our people. We have given all of our children laptops and iPads and helping them to become innovators and have started now on the verge of starting the largest renewable energy course in the Caribbean in our college. And even though our college is one of the smallest, our course will be the largest in the Caribbean, where we can bring people from the other parts of the Caribbean to train in St. Kitts and Nevis on renewable solutions. That's another moonshot idea. So as I wrap up, I just want to say that from the small island space of St. Kitts and Nevis, we have embarked on an ambitious goal to become a sustainable island state. And not only that, we have put our money where our mouth is. We are just asking for partners to join us so that we can fulfill this and give the world a possible model so that we can find solutions to this problem that is affecting all of us. So I want to wrap it up there and say St. Kitts and Nevis. We say it like this: we're small, but we talawa, meaning that we are small, but we are bold. And that is what Moonshot is about. Thank you very much.